how do you future-proof your IT ops teams? What can you do right, right? So, so there are a few things you could do potentially right? So it's not going to end here, meaning that the IT landscape change or IT transformation is not going to end here. Today, you're moving from wherever you are to AWS to containers to Kubernetes or what have you. But the changes will keep coming. There are newer things that will come that you have to adapt to it. So, so over the course of the last decade, the development, engineering, and release teams have done a lot of work to mature their DevOps and CI/CD. So that portion of pushing the changes out smoothly is somewhat mature. But surprisingly, the IT operations, like I said earlier, were not part of that. They were somewhat like a red-headed stepchild. They were ignored to an extent. So first thing they need to do, that when I recommend to the companies, the very first thing they need to realign with, much like the DevOps teams, when a change gets pushed through, if it's going to affect the IT teams, then they need to know that. In other words, the IT ops teams need to be part of the DevOps culture. It's easier said than done, and a lot of companies promise that they do that. But common times, I don't see them doing that. The IT ops teams are not even aware of what the changes had happened over the course of last day or 24 hours. And then they would, when the change happens, they'll be scrambling last minute trying to figure out what the issue is. And the second advice I give the teams, the IT teams that is to have what I call a single source of truth. It doesn't mean that you have to have the same tool to monitor everything across the board, all of them being your logs, your traces and metrics, and your APMs, and your network monitoring, and your DEM tools. They all need to be somehow correlated. You need to have a mechanism, because it's across the place, across the domains, across the cloud locations or hosting locations. You're getting all this information. The problem is, if you don't have a single source of truth, or what I call it as a single observed truth, then it's going to be extremely hard for you to figure out what is the root cause. If you're not able to get to the root cause quickly, then you're going to obviously have a long drawn out war rooms. And I talked about this in our last conference, is that the MTTR is a metric that's very commonly used by IT teams to resolve issues. And the MTTR consists of two components. One is, MTTI, or mean time to identification, and then time it takes to fix the problem that you identified. And now what's happening is the MTTI, because of the issues, getting stretched out much longer. So if your MTTI is going to increase, your MTTR is also going to increase. In other words, you can't fix what you don't know is broken. So unless you know what's broken, it's going to be extremely difficult. This is, again, assuming that if you know what's broken, you have a mechanism in place to fix it, whether it's some sort of a playbook, run book, automated mechanism, or you have some mechanism, scripts to execute, what have you, that you have something in place that when something happens, you need to do this to fix it. If you don't have that in place, you have even bigger problems. So that's another area you need to concentrate, assuming that you know what, and I mean, you know how to fix things. Once you find out what, then we can concentrate on finding out what is the problem. So if you get to what are the root cause of the analysis fairly quickly, and if you know what to do with that, then combined, your time is going to come down. And the last thing that I advise companies is, whether we agree or not, there is too much of data now, particularly with IT operations. When I say too much of data, it's too much of volume of data, too much of variety of data, and even too much of unstructured data at times, from logs, from change management systems. A lot of them are structured, And with case of logs, it may be semi-structured as well, or even unstructured. Your current analytic system may not be able to handle that. So this is where the AI and ML will rise above the rest. It'll the root cause analysis, the pattern matching, the correlation of incidents that happen. Because when an incident happens, it doesn't happen just in one stack. It doesn't happen at the application level. It doesn't just happen at the infrastructure level or what have you. If it happens in one area, it's going to get propagated, and it's going to affect the entire application stack. So you should have a way to figure out if this goes down, that goes down, that goes down almost at the same time. The chances are that they are all somehow correlated, right? So having a human going and taking a look at all of those logs and metrics and traces, and particularly from from APM, from network, and DEM tools and whatnot, and then figure out, that's going to be a monumental task. And obviously, I keep telling people that AI and ML thrive on data. So this is one area that I give advice to folks on how to do things.